All right, so moving on to the next segment. I'll be sharing my top 5 rivalries and UFC history. So I'll be ranking the top 5 rivalries that have transpired in the UFC from number 5 all the way down to number 1. So starting off at number 5, I have Colby Covington and the George Masvidal rivalry. The history spoke for itself in this rivalry between the two guys. I mean, the Colby Covington and George Masvidal were former best friends, former training partners, and they lived together at one point in their own lives. The history ran deep between the two respective fighters. The beef was so deep between the two guys, they had to settle in the octagon, or it would have got worse if it wasn't settled in the octagon. We don't know what could have happened. But when these guys fought a few years ago in the UFC, this was honestly one of Colby Covington's best performances in his UFC career. Colby Covington's gas tank was incredible in the 5 rounds that transpired between himself and his former best friend George Masvidal. Honestly, looking back at that fight, it looked like Colby Covington could go another 2 rounds after going 5 rounds with George Masvidal. But like I said, Colby Covington looked phenomenal in that fight, and George Masvidal just looked old, gas, wasn't willing to swim in the deep waters with Colby Covington. I can't remember if it was the 3rd or 4th round. George Masvidal hit Colby Covington with a clean shot, a clean jab or strike right in the face, and Colby was stunned. And George Masvidal was so gassed, he couldn't even capitalize on the opportunity that Colby Covington was rocked and he was hurt. When you see somebody hurt in all combat sports, that's shark smelling blood in the water. You need to capitalize. You need to finish. But George Masvidal was so gassed in that fight, he let his foot off the pedal. And it allowed Colby Covington to recover, and allowed Colby Covington to give George Masvidal a true belt-to-ass treatment in that 5-round fight, with Colby Covington obviously being the winner of that fight. And number 4, I have the Kamar Usman versus Colby Covington rivalry. Now, the rivalry was very entertaining between Kamar Usman and Colby Covington. It was very entertaining inside and outside of the octagon. The two fighters fought twice. The first fight, you saw Kamar Usman get the controversial stoppage, winning the first fight and holding on to that welterweight championship. Then in the second fight was much better between Kamar Usman and Colby Covington, way better than the first fight. And that fight actually went all 5 championship rounds. Much better outcome than the first one, with Kamar Usman winning the second fight by decision and winning the series between himself and Colby Covington 2-0, and was successfully retaining his welterweight championship on 2 different occasions against Colby Covington. But that rivalry was one of the best rivalries in the welterweight division and the welterweight division's history in the UFC. I mean, like I said, entertaining inside and outside the ring. The octagon, they put on some great fights. Outside the octagon, the promo battles and the build up to the fight was phenomenal between the two respective fighters. That rivalry between Kamar Usman and Colby Covington is number 4 on my list. And number 3, I have Conor McGregor and Khabib's rivalry in the UFC. Now, going back all the way to 2018, Conor McGregor and Khabib has historically put together one of the biggest rivalries in UFC history. The build-up for this fight was truly the biggest build-up to a UFC fight in UFC history. There has been no bigger build-up to a monumental championship fight to what Conor McGregor and Khabib did back in 2018. The promo battles were great. Conor McGregor did not hold back in the trash talking. He meant every word he said to Khabib on the way to that big monumental UFC lightweight championship fight that transpired back in 2018. Who could ever forget the big bus attack that Conor McGregor did on Khabib's team, which got Conor McGregor carried out of Khabib, that got him locked up and had to serve community service afterwards. But the pay-per-view buys that Conor McGregor and Khabib did was at 2.4 million buys and had the biggest Vegas gate, one of the biggest Vegas live gates at 17.2. And we all know what happened. Khabib went on to defeat Conor McGregor by submission in the 4th round to successfully retain the lightweight title. But man, that build-up with Conor McGregor and Khabib was truly special. That is the 3rd biggest rivalry to me in UFC history. And number 2, I have Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. Now, this rivalry between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira started all the way back in the kickboxing days and transpired all the way to the MMA. In an interview, Israel Adesanya was talking about Alex Pereira, which really recruited Alex Pereira over to the UFC and into the MMA. Alex Pereira defeated Israel Adesanya for the first time they fought, and then Israel Adesanya got his revenge to get back that middleweight championship against Alex Pereira last year at UFC 287. So Alex Pereira came in, took Israel Adesanya's title. Then Israel Adesanya defeated Alex Pereira in the rematch at UFC 287. So in the UFC, the series is tied, or in the MMA, the series is tied 1-1. What better way to continue the rivalry than give this to us potentially at UFC 300? But the overall record in the rivalry in kickboxing and MMA has Alex Pereira in the lead 3-1. I do believe this trilogy, whether it's at UFC 300 or not, it's going to be solved and resolved in the MMA world at some point in 2024. That rivalry between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira is number 2 on my list. But number 1, the biggest rivalry in UFC history to me is Jon Jones and DC. Jon Jones and DC to me is the biggest rivalry in UFC history. The build-up, the trash talks, the press conferences were truly insane between Jon Jones and DC. It looked like Jon Jones truly meant every word he said to DC in the build-up. Now, I know in combat sports, sometimes it's business. Sometimes these guys really hate each other and mean every single word that they say in the build-up. And the words that Jon Jones said to DC, I think he truly meant every single word and the build-up and their 2 respective fights for the build-ups. But the 2 fighters fought twice for the light heavyweight championship. Jon Jones won both of those fights. The first fight he won by knockout, or he won by decision against DC, and then the second fight he defeated DC by knockout. But man, their fights were entertaining. The 2 fights that we got between them, 2 respective fighters in the octagon, they were entertaining. One of the biggest, to me, this actually goes down as one of the biggest rivalries and combat sports history between DC and Jon Jones. Man, that was one hell of a rivalry between the 2 respective fighters. So to me, that's the biggest rivalry in UFC history. But those are my top 5 UFC rivalries and UFC history.